Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. I'm Jim Morrison. Today, we have our CEO, Joan Trice, and she'll be interviewing Steve French, the CEO of SettlementOne. They'll be talking about what's coming up for the appraisal industry in 2022 and what it means for appraisers. Joan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome, Steve. It's good to see you again. It was nice to see you live and in person at Val Expo this year. It's even odd that we had that narrow little window where we could all get together and have a great time. So I'm glad we had that opportunity.
Likewise.
So Steve, you've been at this for a while. Tell us, how'd you enter the appraisal profession? Everybody wants to know, how do you actually enter the appraisal profession? Seems to be impossible for a lot of people.
Yeah, to say the least. I think, like many people I've spoken with, it almost happened by accident. So graduated from college about 22 years ago, and like any college grad looking to enter the workforce, just before 9/11, I was in outside sales, and man, it got really hard right after 9/11. And I had a good friend of mine that I went to college with that was working for an appraisal management company. And I always had an interest in real estate. So I took the opportunity to take a job with an appraisal management company in 2002. And I haven't looked back since.
Interesting. So are you a licensed appraiser as well?
So I'm actually a licensed trainee. I got my trainee license in the state of Ohio back in 2014. And, you know, I'd been in the industry about 12 years and had really started to move up the ranks and pretty heavily focused on the client side. But I just took the opportunity to say, I got to hit the reset button and really wanted to expand my knowledge and take a new approach. So I went out and got my trainee license. If you know any supervisory appraisers that are looking to take on a trainee.
You're looking for a supervisor. You're going to do it backwards. You wouldn't be the first person to kind of do things backwards. I started my career as a commercial appraiser, and everybody's like, you don't do it that way. You start as a residential and then you become commercial. But hey, we all find our way into this industry in unique ways. So yeah. How has the industry changed? You've seen a lot of changes in that relatively short period of time.
Yeah, I think way back when I first started, I think AMCs weren't obviously really widely known in the industry. I entered, like I said, back in 2002, and it seemed to be more of an efficiency approach for some of the lenders that we worked with. Most of the lenders back then, much larger scale, we're trying to figure out, more efficient ways to conduct the valuation process. And, they kind of turned it over to an appraisal management company to help them, streamline their processes. And so it felt like the Wild West back then in comparison to where we are today, right? It was a much different approach. The relationships were different. Even the appraisers that we worked with, I think they had a much different outlook on appraisal management companies. It almost back then seemed like it was beneficial to them, rather than having to go out and source all of their own customers. They had the option to come to an appraisal management company that could help them funnel business into their profession and help them, keep their options open. So, then you fast forward about 5 or 6 years following that mortgage crisis in 2006, 2007. And, now we've got the HVCC gets launched, and it really kind of turned, I think, everything on its head.
That really upset the industry. One of the myths, though, that I see around that period of time, Steve, that I find bothersome, of course, simultaneously, and it's not like they were independent events. We had a mortgage crisis.
Yeah.
So when I hear HVCC took away my clients, well, you had a mortgage crisis that wiped out your clients. So it's a kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg question, isn't it?
I think so. And I think it didn't necessarily, either one didn't necessarily take away any customers. It just kind of changed the way that we had to do business. And, certainly the mortgage crisis, you had so many lenders that closed their doors. That obviously, had an impact, but you still had consumers out there that needed a mortgage. They needed to get a loan. So, in essence, it really just changed the landscape, but it didn't necessarily take any business away from anybody. I mean, obviously you had credit guidelines and things like that certainly had an impact for a few years there following, but you still had a consumer that needed to get a loan, and somebody needs to, value that collateral to determine if the loan can be done. So it really just changed the landscape and the relationships that were built. And I think, part of that was the introduction and the explosion of the AMC industry, itself, right? You went from having maybe a few dozen nationwide AMCs in the early 2000s to now hundreds of thousands that were local, regional, state, you name it, in varying sizes. So, and I think that there was quite a bit of capitalism that kind of took shape there, right? You had varying degrees of, opportunities to take advantage of situations, which is highly unfortunate, right? I mean, that's not what we're trying to accomplish. I think at the end of the day, we're here to help a consumer to get a loan. And
yeah, but Steve, I mean, a lot of those opportunists,
yeah,
they're not around anymore.
No, they're not.
So, the market does work. We did have a little bit of a flushing sound, and
yes, we did.
A few of the AMCs who had short-term goals,
right,
are no more, and that's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not
hey,
at all.
Steve, let's do this. Let's take a commercial break.
Okay.
And when we come back, let's talk about the future instead of the past.
Sounds good.
Okay.
We didn't build Remote Val for appraisals. We built it for appraisers. With Remote Val, you are in control. Unlike a hybrid valuation, you directly gather the information, photos, and measurements you need while communicating with the homeowner. And with no travel time, Remote Val increases the number of inspections you can perform. Combined with 24-hour pay or exclusive benefits, it's no wonder appraisers are choosing in-center appraisal management. Remote Val is fast, easy to use, and completely free for appraisers. To see a demo of Remote Val in action, visit incenteram.com.
So, Steve, what's your vision of the future? What do you think's around the corner for appraisers and for AMCs and for lenders?
Well, I think that, most importantly, we are moving into a much more digital age, right? When you think about the mortgage industry as a whole, the appraisal process is really the last piece of the puzzle where we still have a physical interaction between individuals, right? I think of the first home that I ever bought. I had to drive across town and meet with a closer and sit down and go through all this paperwork, and that's all been digitized. We do everything over the internet.
Remotely,
even done remote. And even with applying for a mortgage or working with a loan officer, I can't recall the last time I actually had to sit down in person with my loan officer to talk about the best options available to me. And I think that the appraisal profession is moving towards that. And I think the last 2 years, especially with the COVID pandemic, is kind of opening the door for those opportunities. And, just like any industry, over time, things change, they advance, they improve. And, I think there's a ton of opportunity that still exists within the appraisal profession to improve upon those processes. So, I think that that's one really big thing that we need to look forward to is how can we make the process better, for all parties involved. And at the end of the day, most importantly, for the consumer.
Indeed. So sort of in the same vein, where does technology fit into that vision of the future?
That's a great question. I think that, we've seen a ton of new products and a ton of new tools and technology that are available to, all aspects of the mortgage industry. And, there is new technology available to appraisers through either software that they utilize or way that they can communicate with homeowners, communicate with appraisal management companies, with lenders. And, I think that that's going to continue to take shape. And the hope obviously here is that people, they adopt that, they embrace it, and they utilize it in a way to improve not just their own business, but again, improve the process for the consumer. And we've seen a variety of different tools available. And of course, at the Val Expo is a great example where we get some incredible technology providers that come together under one roof and talk about ways that we can make the process better. And obviously the hope there is that in conjunction with the introduction of technology is a way that we can, teach people to utilize it in the best fashion. So it really is going to take a holistic approach, a homogeneous approach from all angles to make that a reality. And what I mean by that is not just lenders, saying that we need you to do this, or an AMC that requires an appraiser to do it, but that appraisers also embrace that technology as a way to improve their own business. So I'm excited for that. I think that there's a lot coming down the road here, and I think COVID has actually sped up, the need for that, or at least recognizing the need for that.
Yeah, I don't think too many people want to be grateful or bow down to the COVID gods
Sure.
for the gift they gave us, but you're right. I mean, yes, there's been some improvements come out of the rather tragic situation we've found ourselves in, and it's amazing with all the human interaction that is involved coming in and out of consumers' home, and in spite of the COVID flexibilities that the agencies put forth, appraisers, for the most part, have still been doing inspections throughout much of this and have remained not 100% safe, but we haven't had too many casualties, which is a great thing. And I agree with you. I've seen some very interesting technologies, inspection tools.
Yep.
I'm thrilled to see that Fannie Mae has adopted ANSI standard for measuring. Yep. I think that's an incredibly important, I wouldn't call it a technology, but it certainly is going to allow us to leverage the technology, because if you're going to have measuring tools, they all need to be measuring the same way, or it just won't make sense. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And I think there's other opportunities there in the standards space yet to be accomplished. So
agree.
Hopefully we can look at that in 2022. Well, let's do this. Let's take another quick break and we'll be right back.
Looking for better turn times, the ability to automate routine tasks and stay in compliance with your appraisal management processes? Evo, state-of-the-art appraisal management technology for residential and commercial real estate lenders and AMCs, was built with the user in mind. Evo streamlines the appraisal experience with configurable workflow design that automates 100% of routine tasks, alerts you on the way, and gives you powerful reports to make timely decisions. It's the only platform in the market with total customizations out of the box without IT development or intervention. Find out more at globaldms.com or call 877-866-2747.
So, Steve, where are the weak spots? I mean, we've been through a tough couple of years. How are we going to turn this around?
Yeah, I think, there's been a lot of polarization, in a number of different areas, whether that's, politically or socially, or just within the industry itself. And I think it's, everybody's been through a rough couple of years, as you said. And, I think really the way to turn this around is to, just create a more homogeneous environment, a more holistic approach to, working together, to solving problems together and coming together. Not any one side is going to benefit unless, everybody benefits. So I think that I think everybody's ready to move forward at this point, and they're ready for improvement. But it really all starts with, working together to implement those improvements. So if there was a weak spot, I think we've seen it, and now it's time for us to
come
put
out the other side. Yeah. So I agree.
I think that's one of my biggest hopes for the next year and beyond is to continue to figure out ways to work together, and whether that's through collaboration with competitors or just getting everybody from all aspects of the business in a room together to start figuring out how can we improve this for everyone, as opposed to just doing it for ourselves. I think that that's really the next big step for the industry.
I couldn't agree with you more. So let's end this on a happy note and sing a little valuation. Kumbaya.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joan and Steve. We appreciate your insight. And thanks so much for the appraisers for joining us and our sponsors for helping us to put these together. We're looking forward to see what 2022 has in store for the appraisal industry. If you have any questions or would like to be interviewed, reach out to us at info@appraisalbuzz.com. Thanks and have a great day. Stop waiting 30+ days to get paid on your appraisal invoices. Cicady Capital is a simple and secure payment platform that improves your cash flow and reduces the time you have to spend on paperwork and making collection calls. The process is simple. After the initial account setup, simply submit your invoices to Cicady Capital instead of your AMC or lender. You receive payment the next business day, while Cicady Capital collects the payment from your AMC or lender, leaving you with more time to do what you want to do. We even have an option for same-day payment. For additional questions or to set up your account, call Cicady Capital Support Team at 208-953-7234. That's 208-953-7234. Or email them at support@cicady.com. That's support@sekady.com.